The death of a pope is one of the most solemn and significant events within the Catholic Church. It is not only the passing of the spiritual leader, but also the conclusion of a pontificate, marking the beginning of a series of ancient rites and traditions. But do you know exactly what happens when a pope dies? From the official confirmation of death to the public display of the body in St. Peter's Basilica, every detail follows strict protocols laden with symbolism and meaning. The world stops, the bells toll, and the Church enters a period of deep mourning as cardinals and the faithful prepare for a new chapter in the history of the Vatican. In today's video, we will delve into this fascinating process. We will understand what happens in the first moments after the Pope's death, which ceremonies are performed, and how tradition has evolved over the centuries. The death of a pope has always been an event of great impact within the Catholic Church and the world. Since the early centuries of Christianity, the passing of a pope required not only mourning, but also the organization of solemn rites to honor his life and prepare for the transition to a new pontificate. In the early centuries, popes were often buried in the catacombs of Rome, like St. Peter. However, with the construction of the old St. Peter's Basilica in the 4th century, it became a tradition to bury popes within the Vatican or in important churches in the city. Throughout the Middle Ages, as the papacy strengthened as both a political and spiritual institution, post-mortem rites became more elaborate. The death of a pope became an event of not only religious, but also political significance, involving cardinals and secular authorities. In the 20th century, tradition was formalized in documents such as the Apostolic Constitution, Universi Dominici Gregis, promulgated by St. John Paul II in 1996, which establishes the rules for the Sede Vacante period and the conclave. The death of a pope initiates a sequence of deeply symbolic and strictly regulated rites. It all begins with the official confirmation of death, which must be performed by the Camerlengo, the administrator of the Vatican, during the transition period. Following tradition, he approaches the Pope's bedside and calls him by his baptismal name 3 times. If there is no response, he officially declares the death and removes the fisherman's ring, one of the most important symbols of the papacy, which is immediately destroyed to prevent forgeries. After the confirmation of death, the Vatican enters the period known as Sede Vacante. During this phase, all papal powers cease, and the Church is governed by the College of Cardinals, led by the Camerlengo. A series of bureaucratic and liturgical measures are put into practice, including the closure of the papal apartments and the sealing of confidential documents. The body is then prepared for public display. Traditionally, it is dressed in red liturgical vestments, symbolizing martyrdom and the testimony of Christ. The private wake takes place in the papal chapel, allowing those closest to the deceased to pay their respects before the body is taken to St. Peter's Basilica. Meanwhile, bells are rung, and telegrams are sent to religious leaders and heads of state around the world, informing them of the passing. With this, the Catholic world enters a period of deep mourning, preparing for the coming days of solemn ceremonies and the farewell to the successor of St. Peter. After the initial funeral rites and the confirmation of the Pope's death, the Church enters a period of deep mourning, marked by a series of solemn ceremonies. The Pope's body is transferred from the papal chapel to St. Peter's Basilica, where it will be publicly displayed so that faithful from around the world can pay their respects. This transfer is accompanied by a solemn procession formed by cardinals, bishops, and members of the Roman Curia who pray and chant liturgical hymns. Upon arrival at St. Peter's Basilica, the Pope's body is placed on a catafalque, a special support where it will remain exposed during the days of the wake. He's dressed in liturgical vestments appropriate for the occasion, including the mitre and the pallium, symbols of his pastoral authority. The gospel is placed upon his chest, a symbolic gesture that refers to his role as a guardian of the Word of God. During the days of the wake, the basilica remains open for the visitation of the faithful. Thousands of people gather to pay their final respects, forming long lines that extend around the Vatican. Meanwhile, the cardinals begin preparatory meetings for the conclave that will elect the new pope, following strict protocols established by the Apostolic Constitution. In addition to public ceremonies, masses are celebrated for the repose of the late pope's soul. These liturgical rites include the funeral mass, one of the most important ceremonies of the period, in which biblical readings and special prayers are offered, asking God to receive the Pope in his eternal glory. The wake traditionally lasts between 3 and 5 days, allowing as many faithful as possible to bid farewell to the pontiff. The funeral ceremony takes place in St. Peter's Basilica, where the pontiff's body is kept under vigil by cardinals, bishops, priests, and the faithful. During the funeral mass, biblical readings and prayers are offered, asking God to welcome the Pope's soul into his eternal glory. After the ceremony, the body is carried in procession to its final resting place. Traditionally, popes are buried in the Vatican grottos, beneath St. Peter's Basilica, near the tombs of their predecessors. The coffin, which undergoes a specific ritual, is sealed with documents and coins from the pontificate and placed within 2 additional coffins, ensuring its preservation over time. The moment of burial is marked by the tolling of bells and the church's final prayers, symbolically closing the pontificate and preparing the faithful for succession. It is a moment of mourning and renewal of faith, reflecting the continuity of the church's mission through the centuries. With the burial completed, the church enters a period of calm, during which the Camerlengo temporarily assumes the administration of the Vatican. He is responsible for ensuring the functioning of the Holy See, overseeing the church's assets, and preparing the way for the election of the new pope. No doctrinal or long-term decisions can be made during this period, ensuring an orderly transition of power. Meanwhile, the Dean of the College of Cardinals summons the cardinals for the conclave, the secret process of electing the new pope. The cardinals gather for prayers and preliminary discussions before proceeding to the Sistine Chapel, where the election takes place behind closed doors. The Church and the faithful around the world follow this crucial moment with anticipation, awaiting the sign of the white smoke that will announce the new leader of the Catholic Church. The passing of a pope marks one of the most solemn moments in the life of the Catholic Church. From the first moments after the confirmation of death to the funeral rites and the wake in St. Peter's Basilica, every detail is imbued with symbolism and tradition. These rituals not only honor the deceased pontiff, but also reaffirm the continuity of the Church, preparing the way for the selection of a new successor to St. Peter. During these days, millions of faithful unite in prayer, recalling the teachings and pastoral mission of the one who led the Church. It is a period of introspection, but also of hope, as the cycle of faith continues with the election of a new spiritual leader. This moment closes an important chapter in the history of Catholicism and opens the way for the arrival of a new pontiff, who will guide the Church in its mission of evangelization. If you enjoyed this content and want to follow more fascinating stories about the Catholic Church, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. This way, you help us continue bringing well-researched and valuable information to you. Enable the notification bell so you don't miss any updates, and share this video with friends and family who might also be interested in the topic. Your participation is very important for the growth of our channel. Leave your comment below, telling us what you thought of the video and what other topics you would like to see here. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.